So I've introduced myself. I'm Jay Olson. I'm an investment research analyst at Oppenheimer in New York, and I do a lot of work in the obesity space. And it's a pleasure to co-moderate this panel with Michael Rice. And Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Rice. I lead Lumanity's advanced therapeutics practice. I focus on novel technology platforms and new targets in different disease areas, and I work across all therapeutic areas. And the last, several years, there was a lot of investment in breakthrough technology platforms, RNA therapeutics, cell gene therapies, novel biologics, largely in rare diseases and more homogeneous genetic populations. As those platforms have become validated, they're now being applied towards larger diseases. And so you see many novel platforms, new targets coming to address the unmet needs for obesity, cardiometabolic, and renal diseases. And so today's panel, Platform Technologies, Obesity Management Going Beyond BMI is the focus of our conversation. We're going to really follow up on Joel and David's excellent panel that we just saw on unmet needs and sort of the large pharma perspective at addressing those unmet needs and some of the approaches there. But we're going to dig down deeper into the biology. We're going to look at, how we are addressing these unmet needs with novel technology platforms, whether they are formulation technologies and devices or some of these, disruptive, genetic therapies that I had just mentioned. And so we have a great set of biotech innovators in this space that are doing exactly that. So we're going to dig down into the biology of body composition. We're going to focus on, what is going on there. How are we rethinking about BMI and other metrics of body composition, and looking at how we're also addressing all those points with these novel innovative approaches. And then we're going to get into areas that are, obviously going down the list of unmet needs that we just heard, improving the patient experience, improving chronicity of treatment. We're going to talk about muscle sparing or ways to augment loss of lean muscle mass, as well as stop the cycling. Can we keep patients and educate them that obesity is a long-term commitment, just not a binge, right? And then we're also going to get into areas of biologies, including senescence, fibrosis, inflammation, and bioenergetics. So with that, I will hand it over and start talking to introducing the panelists. Let them tell us a little bit about, who you are and, what you're doing at your firm today. So, go ahead, Brady.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Brady Miller. I'm a director and lead of Syndicated Services at Fenix. If you don't know who Fenix is, we're a life science consulting firm with a rich heritage in cardiometabolic. So I've been coming to ADA since 2012, really focused on obesity. I was at the EMPA-REG outcomes trial back in 2025, so really saw the change in where diabetes was to where it is now. And then we're in the midst of that change right now with obesity. So really excited to be here. Shameless plug, if you're interested in signing up for our syndicated service or want a free trial, please feel free to reach out to me after this. I'm happy to do so.
Great, thanks, Brady. Erik.
Hi everyone, I'm Erik Ingelsson. I'm Chief Scientific Officer at Wave Life Sciences. Wave background, I'm a physician scientist by training, spent a long time in academia, and then GSK for about 5 years and now biotech. In terms of Wave, we're an oligonucleotide company. We were went public about 10 years ago, built on two basic premises. One is that chemistry matters. We've done a lot of innovations in the oligonucleotide space and trying to push RNA therapeutics forward. Second, deep insights in human genetics really matter. So we're a clinical stage company. We have programs in Huntington's disease, Duchenne's muscle dystrophy. We're the first to do RNA editing in human now about 2 years ago. And then we have our obesity program now starting phase 2 soon. And the fifth program starting soon with MASH as well. So in terms of the obesity program, this is true to our background building on human genetics. It was observed that carriers of loss-of-function variants in a gene called INHBE have a much better cardiometabolic protection profile. They have less abdominal obesity, visceral fat, better lipid profile, low risk of type 2 diabetes, MASH, and cardiovascular disease. So we're trying to mirror that with a GalNAc siRNA, so lowering INHBE and activin E, and thereby releasing a brake on lipolysis, or in other words, increasing lipolysis, which is the breakdown of triglycerides directly in the fat cells. We have a lot of preclinical data to support the monotherapy approach without muscle loss, combo together with incretins, as well as maintenance on off-ramp to incretins. And now emerging clinical data as well. We have dosed now over 100 patients in our phase 1 trial, which is a lower BMI population of around 32. But even with that, in addition to the safety and pharmacology, we have seen now emerging evidence of pharmacodynamics as well. Already in this phase 1 trial, after 6 months after the one injection of this subcutaneous GalNAc siRNA, we saw around 15% reduction of visceral adiposity, around 5% reduction of total fat, and no effect on muscle. So very attractive profile. We think based on the pharmacology, we see at this point we have data 8 months out with one injection, and we still see a lot of suppression. So we think it's a once a year or at most twice a year drug, subcutaneous, and the only adverse events we've seen so far are injection site reactions. So we're now starting with our phase 2 data in higher BMI populations with comorbidities, looking forward to a lot to that, in addition to the combo with incretins as well as maintenance, and all of that is starting for the rest of this year.
Thanks, Erik. John, why don't you go next?
Thanks. So I'm John Rees. I'm a chief exec and co-founder at MitoRx Therapeutics. I kind of started life as a metabolic engineer, and this is my 4th entrepreneurial journey. So MitoRx is really about restoring mitochondrial health in high-risk obesity through driving fat-specific weight loss. We're a preclinical stage small molecule company heading to nominate first clinical candidate toward the end of the year, and monotherapy. So we see a very nice fat-specific weight loss in the industry standard DIO model. No lean mass loss associated with this mechanism. It's durable. The quality of weight loss is better than tirzepatide standard of care. In fact, both quantity, quality, and durability of weight loss in that model exceeds standard of care. And I'll present those results at 2:20 today here in the other room, and a bunch more results at ADA on Sunday. So really we're here to both drive weight loss, but I think at the root of metabolic unhealthy obesity, reverse insulin resistance, and we can see in the data we'll present again later, very nice early reversal of insulin resistance. And we're doing that through a root cause treatment. And the aim is, and I can say this also as a patient in a different disease area, we want to reverse the trajectory of disease. And I think here, we all know GLP-1s have had an incredible impact. But if we're talking about the reversal of insulin resistance, I really don't think it's very good if 70 to 80% of the patients have ceased therapy after a year or two, and with it the reversal of insulin resistance. So we need to reverse disease trajectory to avoid progression into T2D, MAFLD MASH, and atherosclerotic CVD. So that's what we're here to do. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Kevin?
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Kevin Slawin. I'm the founder of SENOLYTIX, a longevity company that's developing novel therapeutics that target the fundamental cause of aging. And we're targeting a mitochondrial, the inner mitochondrial membrane, which has a reduction in the mitochondrial membrane potential as we age in all living species, all the way from humans to worms. It's a universal mechanism of aging, and our technology targets the inner mitochondrial membrane and leads to two dramatic mechanisms. Number one is it immediately restores mitochondrial efficiency back to when we were younger. So as we get older, mitochondria make less and less ATP per molecule of glucose, but this technology restores it back immediately to its full efficiency. In addition, it triggers senescent cells to self-eliminate themselves. So after weeks of therapy, 60 to 90% of the senescent cells in the body are eliminated. That's the most efficient senolytic ever used in the clinic. And once you do that, it leads to dramatic changes, including a loss of fat greater than you can achieve with GLPs. And really the only technology that increases lean mass dramatically. So today, what we see are companies developing things to try and lessen the loss of muscle mass we see with GLPs, or at least, but ours actually increases it. So that's unique. Also, I'm giving a talk later today to announce a couple of dramatic things. One is that our technology increases life expectancy dramatically in preclinical models, which I don't think anybody's seen before with this type of mechanism. And then also we'll be showing extensive data and long-term studies showing dramatic findings in preclinical models when animals cycle even one time on and off a GLP. Very dramatic things happen, but you can only see it 60 weeks down the road, and that's why I don't think anybody understands that yet. And so we'll be presenting those findings, I think at 1:30 today in the other room. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Olivier?
Yes, thank you. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Olivier Soula, CEO and co-founder of ADOCIA, a French biotech. And this company has been dedicated to innovate in the field of peptide delivery. And since the creation 20 years ago, we have worked on insulin. And as we have developed new formulations to improve insulin delivery, to make it more rapid, ultra rapid, and we've completed last year 2 phase 3 with 1,500 patients to demonstrate that we can improve the glycemic control by improving this delivery of this mealtime insulin. We are well positioned to also improve the delivery of these metabolic peptides. And in the past, we worked, for example, for the delivery of the co-formulation of a long-acting and a fast-acting insulin, which are 2 incompatible peptides. And today, we are evolving to bring innovation to the delivery of metabolic peptides because we think that there are 2 main objectives, as we've heard earlier, to, at the end of the day, close the gap between health span and life expectancy. One is how to have a long-term use of this treatment, and that is not an easy one. And the second question is how to treat a significant portion of the eligible population, and we are far from there. And so for these 2 questions, the delivery is critical, and I think we think that this field is entering in its insulin era, in the sense that over 1 century of innovation on insulin, it has been more about how to improve the delivery of insulin. And today, 80 million people are taking insulin daily. Nobody is questioning to stop the use of insulin. And as a result, if you look at it, the life expectancy and the health span of insulin-dependent people is pretty good and very close to the normal population. So it's exactly the challenge we have. Nobody is questioning the power of this therapeutic revolution. We should question the health impact.
All right, thank you all for those introductions. And I think one of the topics that really resonated with this panel in our preparation discussion was around body composition. And we spoke about the degree of lean muscle mass that is lost through any form of weight loss, whether it's diet or bariatric surgery or GLP-1 induced weight loss. But certain GLP-1 drugs do cause more lean muscle mass loss than others. And the cycling that was mentioned in the introductions is also harmful to body composition in terms of sarcopenic body mass loss, but then sarcopenic weight regain. So I guess maybe I'd ask our panelists to weigh in on their thoughts around improving body composition in the context of weight loss, and also really appreciate the comments on the fact that increased fat and decreased muscle mass is harmful to survival, and increased lean muscle mass and decreased fat improves survival. So what we're really talking about is kind of improving our health spans and narrowing that health span lifespan gap. But any of our panelists want to kind of jump in on that and share their thoughts?
I don't mind starting. So I thought it was interesting, the panel preceding us, the big players on the stage were quoting statistics about how BMI affects long-term survival. And that is definitely true. And if the only way you could reduce your weight if you were obese was to lose fat, but also or lose weight, but have 25 to 40% of it be your muscle, if that was really the only way you could do it, that's the way you should do it. Because I'm a physician, and obesity and BMI has been a driver of longevity and long-term mortality. But I think it's getting more established. I mean, in my opinion, it's established, but I think it's getting more established that muscle mass or muscle mass index, anything you want to call it, is a much stronger predictor of mortality than fat or BMI. So, I think until now, not much has been said about this, even though it's established fact, is because GLP-1s are not listed. Loss of muscle is not listed on the adverse event list of GLPs. And the reason it's not is because they have argued, as a class of manufacturers, they've argued to the FDA that there's really no way to lose weight without also losing both fat and muscle. It's not an effect of our drug. It's just an effect of weight loss. And therefore, we shouldn't have to list it as an adverse event. And they made a good argument. I don't see any reason why it's a problem that it was accepted. And that can only remain true until somebody has a technology that can lose fat and increase muscle. And I think that's coming very soon, and I don't think the conversation can be avoided anymore. So for long-term health, you can't just think about losing weight over this last 13 weeks or 52 weeks or 70 weeks. It's all about living healthier for the rest of your life. And I'll be presenting data later, dramatic data regarding that, because we do very long-term studies in preclinical models, and we've identified things that aren't really being discussed right now that I think will become front and center. So I think body composition is sort of the next wave. BMI is important, and GLP-1s made dramatic advances there, but I think what I'm seeing on the stage here today is focusing on muscle, which is important, and then the other very important aspect of body composition is loss of visceral fat versus fat in general. So it's really the visceral fat that's metabolically unhealthy, and as far as I can tell from my research into it, there are some technologies that are better focused on visceral fat. Maybe GLP-1s aren't the best for that, and so I think visceral fat loss and muscle preservation and or muscle gain, not muscle preservation, muscle gain, will be in the conversation going forward.
Excellent. Yeah, John?
I'd like to agree with Kevin. I think most drugs in this field work by reduction in food intake. And I think the problem we see with the effects of marketed drugs on body composition is really a result of that focus. And so it's no surprise that many of the next-gen companies are focusing away from suppression of food intake. I think when we really come down to the fundamentals, when we think about weight loss, we should really be thinking about fat loss. Again, in data I'll present in a few hours here, we can see 62% fat loss with MitoRx 31 treated animals compared to control. We strongly decrease adiposity in all important metabolic tissues, including pancreas and liver, and this is taking place relatively fast and early, without affecting food intake and without any loss of lean mass. And it really comes down to, I think, the fundamentals of what are we trying to achieve in developing metabolic medicines. And I think we know the association between fatty pancreas and potential progression of T2D, etc. And it's obvious. We don't have to talk about the same in liver and hepatosteatosis. So in a way, this top of the pops who can achieve the highest rate of weight loss, which the investment banks, the media love playing, it's a nice game, but what patients need is they need us to develop medicines that strip the fat out of key organs. That's what we do. I hope there are many other technologies doing the same thing. And this debate about lean mass loss, and I say lean mass because I'm not sure DEXA really cuts it. MRI better, but still, I'm not sure MRI really tells us measuring muscle, we're measuring lean mass loss. I think the loss of any metabolically active tissue, like lean mass, is an adverse effect. Fundamentally, it undermines metabolic capacity, resting metabolic rate. And anyone who goes to the gym and has lost weight doing that will know I'm one of them. So this fundamental effect of lean mass loss through, really, I think it's a starvation response to a lack of food intake, it undermines the purpose of what we're all trying to do. So I say again, amazing what GLP-1s have done, but we also need a next generation of drugs for people with the highest risk obesity, and we need to reverse those trajectories in a sustainable and durable way.
Maybe just to add to this, it seems like we're a lot in agreement here, but maybe a few additional perspectives. So obesity is, ultimately it is a disease of excess fat. And so if you have a mechanism or a therapeutic where you can decrease the fat without impacting muscle, that's going to be better for you, and especially the visceral fat. Visceral fat is what drives all of these outcomes. Keeping muscle is also beneficial because it's the most important metabolic organ. It keeps up your basal metabolic rate, insulin sensitivity, and it protects against weight regain. So all of those are important things. I think we should acknowledge, though, that it's slow to move a field here, but I do see a lot of good signs. Like the FDA draft guidance last year had an emphasis on healthy weight loss. I do see all the strategics are really coming around to this idea of body composition being important. I also see it with regulatory agencies as well as investors at this point. So I think the whole field is moving. As a sign, I was in a panel last year at this meeting, and it was much less focused on that than what I see now across all of these panels. So it's a good sign, and I think we're moving in a good direction that will benefit patients ultimately.
Can I add one other quick thing? With our technology, we lose fat, but we gain muscle. So when I look at our total weight loss, it's not as good as, let's say, a GLP, because we lose a lot of fat, but then we add weight back on the muscle side. And so the total weight loss doesn't look as good as, let's say, a GLP, where you're losing muscle and fat. So personally, looking at total weight loss, which everybody is focusing on, even now that there may be a change, but Lilly's retatrutide is proclaiming that their 30% weight loss is best in class, but 8% of that's lean mass. And if our technology adds 8% mass, I have to lose 38% of weight to reach a 30% weight loss. So, it really doesn't make much sense to me to continue going in that direction. If one technology, weight loss, has to add back muscle, and it counts against them.
Maybe I'll be the contrarian here. In full disclosure, I've taken semaglutide, I've taken tirzepatide, personally lost weight on both, great drugs. The idea of losing weight and maintaining weight loss is a great idea in theory, but unless you can reach the same levels of weight loss with the GLP-1s, it's going to be a tough message to sell to patients. And ultimately, this is very much a consumer-driven market. So unless you're able to break through that message without explaining too much, it's going to be very challenging to do.
Maybe just one quick follow-up before I turn it back over to Michael. I hear a lot about alternatives to total body mass and BMI. How close are we to having a measure of body composition that can be validated as a surrogate marker that is reasonably predictive of survival or some other outcome?
Yeah, so we have very encouraging discussions with regulatory agencies at this point, and we heard earlier from Melissa Jones as well that there are like separate efforts going on. I think there is some movement there, but it's still not a registrational endpoint as body weight loss. Now, you can also shoot for, like we are doing, shoot for at least a 5% overall body weight loss to get the registration, but then the differentiation is really in the drug where you have a total fat loss that is superior without losing any muscle. No, but there is some movement on it, but it's not a done deal yet.
I just want to make another point on that. I don't think it's all about replacing GLP-1s. I mean, I'll show a lot of data that in combination, our technology with GLPs reverses their muscle loss to muscle gain within 5 weeks of combination. So it's not necessarily only replacing them, it could be used in combination. I do want to make another point about, you said what's a good endpoint for body composition, because I've thought a lot about this regarding DEXA scans. DEXA scans are used a lot to determine body composition in clinical trials. But as we're moving towards longevity and healthy longevity, and a lot of times we're talking about healthy individuals, and you want to monitor them over a lifetime, even though there's not a lot of radiation in a DEXA scan, there is some. And so we've been looking at the entire scope of technology available today, and recently we've added the in-body 970S device, which uses bioimpedance to track body composition. And while that technology is not as accurate as DEXA scan, it's very accurate when you're longitudinally following somebody in terms of their change over time. It may not give you the accurate percentage compared to the DEXA scan, but we've now added that to all of our clinical trials, in human clinical trials. So, because I think it's true, we'll need a way to follow this other than just so if it's the same thing, you're standing on a scale. Now the cheaper ones, these very cheap, like the Hume, the Body Pod, or even InBody has a cheap one. I don't think they're accurate enough. So this 970S is $45,000. So I'm not sure yet what the right answers are yet, but I think we do need a non-invasive, non-radiation emitting technology to track this going forward.
Yep. Okay. Olivier?
Yes, if I may, I would like to make a comparison, an analogy for type 1D. Since the discovery of the CGM, for all the physicians, it was an obviousness to replace the HbA1c by the time in range for the patients. And everyone complained about HbA1c was a mean, it was not so meaningful because you don't see the hyperglycemia, the hypoglycemia. And finally, what happened? Very recently, FDA approved the time in range as a critical success factor, but it took 20 years. And at least it's cheap, it's validated, but be careful. You remember we had this accident 6 months ago, 5 people died because of recording of the CGM. And so here it's an obviousness again to wish to replace BMI by visceral fat, muscle mass. It's complicated, more complicated than the time in range, from what I'm hearing. It will happen, but I always come back to in between. Now, what should we do? We should put the patient in the center. And the physician, if I ask a good physician like Yotis George here, Yotis, could you appreciate who between us has an excess of fat mass, who should preserve its muscle mass? You would have an opinion which would be very relevant. I mean, it's all about quantification, but we should first remind that how you diagnose someone is super relevant. And at the end, we should be more patient-centric, more physician-centric, and we don't, and in a way, we don't need to quantify. And I think also, we will not talk too much of the BMI because we have heard that these treatments, they correct multiple the metabolic disorder. So it's not only a question of obesity, protecting your beta cells, improving your glycemia, correcting your sleeping disorder. Do you have a sleeping disorder? Have you already a renal problem? And that is an appreciation of the medical doctor. Of course, at the end of the day, you want to simplify for FDA, for approval, for regulatory reasons. But at the end, we should think about the practice.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Excellent. Thank you, Olivier. Back to you, Michael.
So I want to come back to Brady's comments in a couple of minutes on, the voice of the market, right? And that, patients just want to lose weight as quick as possible for their wedding or whatever's coming up, we did spend a lot of time in body composition and, the implications of losing lean muscle mass as a potential adverse event, and new metrics for or biomarkers for how to measure that and detect that. And I don't know if you're thinking about that is identifying patients at risk or stratifying the patient populations, or if this is just a total broad process that's associated with incretin treatment. So I don't know, just before we leave that topic, are you talking about stratifying the market, or is this just another tool for clinical development that's showing the importance of drugs that augment muscle gain, at least preventing loss, if not gain?
Yeah. I mean,
John. Go ahead, John, first.
So, we're particularly interested in this metabolically unhealthy obesity submarket, which, just going back to the last discussion on BMI, where some seniors may have BMI below 30, but they'll have enlarged waist size, and they'll clearly have metabolic disease. So enlarged waist size, expanded, high triglycerides is a particular, it's relatively easy to segment market that we're very interested in exploring, really going back to the root of reversing insulin resistance early. And yes, as we see in preclinical models, we would expect to see very significant body weight loss. But I think the key outcome is really from body composition, and an achieved outcome is change in fat percentage. So that change in trajectory, that indicates that your approach is working.
Mm-hmm. Kevin?
Just in response to Brady's comments, and then just to answer your question, number one is, at least with our technology, first of all, our technology doesn't target fat or muscle. It just targets aging, and then the fat goes away and the muscle grows all by itself. It's really remarkable. But we've seen, after 30 weeks of treatment, comparing a GLP-1 to, let's say, ours as monotherapy, after 30 weeks, the lines cross, and our technology, we lose more fat and more weight than you can lose with a GLP-1. And while GLP-1s tend to plateau out, ours doesn't. It just keeps reducing until you get to a healthy body weight. So I think that's important. So, overall, I think if you can lose the same amount of weight, then the messaging's easy. If you can't lose as much weight, then you've got a challenge, because people look in the mirror and they don't want a fancy graph of body comp. They want to see if their clothes fit. And I just was reading online today that department stores have a big problem now, because everybody keeps returning clothes at a different size, and they have all these returns now. I don't know what to do with it. So the impact here is dramatic. But I think you're right about that. It's all about if your clothes fit.
Mm-hmm. Great. Time is moving quick in this panel. So let's just jump into discussing so since we're identifying multiple problems, but we spend a lot of time in muscle loss. We have better biomarkers that we're developing, generating more evidence. We still need to figure out how to use that to stratify or make it more clinically actionable. But what are the targets? What are the targets? How are you employing your drug technology to drug them? And, maybe we can just sort of go around and everybody talk a little bit about, the hottest targets that are addressing this issue. Good. Erik, you want to start?
Sure, I can start. Yeah. So again, we pick our targets based on human genetics, and I led human genetics across all therapeutic areas at GSK for a long time and target discovery. And I think it's a good starting point. It won't always work, but it on average increases your probability of successful launch with 2 to 4 times, depending on how strong the genetics is. So that's the starting point for us. Obviously, we also want to pick targets that have a good translational path and a big open market and a big market opportunity. Inhibin E hits all of those things, and that's why we're excited about that opportunity.
Great. Who else? Go ahead.
Yeah. So as I said, our expertise is in peptide delivery, and clearly our target is how to improve the chronic use, and which is super important to deliver the health benefits, and so of course we have developed technologies to improve the experience of the patients, making an oral drug. And as you know, Wegovy pill has a superb launch since the beginning of this year, but still the technology behind Eligen is very variable, low bioavailability. So how to improve that, how to have a better efficacy and less variability, and it's exactly what we have developed with Adderall. So and that can be applied to multiple peptides, but also for the injectables, which are complementary, because on the injectables you can have more precise dosing, and we think that's an evolution of the treatment, which is wishable, because we should remind these drugs are hormones, and we should offer more personalized medicine with the ability to have click counting. And so now it's all about to have stable formulation with antibacterial agents, with co-formulations, and that is not trivial. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, very often, it's impossible. So we have developed for that technology, BioChaperone. So clearly, patient-centric, remind that these are hormones and that we should be used more delicately in a way, more precisely.
So just to add to the panel's excellent answers. So first of all, we came at this from a different way. We weren't in obesity. We were in longevity. So we started out building models. Our first year was just building models to do longevity research. It's totally different than doing metabolic research. So we built all these models, and then using them, we stumbled across something dramatic, which is that we've stumbled across a technology that targets the inner mitochondrial membrane, the lower mitochondrial membrane potential, that is a hallmark of aging in all living species. And we had a lot of data. So I went to my daughter, who just graduated medical school. I said, Bailey, what are they teaching you about the Krebs cycle these days? She said, well, they're teaching us that you get 34 ATP for every molecule of glucose that's burned in the mitochondria. I go, is that all they're telling you? She said, yeah. I said, well, it's not really true. Because the truth is, you get 34 ATP per molecule of glucose when you're young. Mm-hmm. But then as you start getting older, it's 32, and then it's 30, and then it's 28, and then it's 25, and then it's 23. And at some number, there's just not enough ATP to run the processes of life. They don't teach that. Nobody teaches that. And that's why nobody talks about it. So, our target is the inner mitochondrial membrane that immediately restores mitochondrial efficiency back to 34 and also eliminates senescent cells, which reduces all the inflammaging in the body. And we don't target the muscle and we don't target the fat, but we can lose 30, 40, 50% of the fat in an aging model and increase 15% muscle And we're not targeting activin, we're not targeting any of that. We're just removing the inflammation and the defect in aging, and then the body reverses all this all by itself. So, and then the last thing about it, is this market going to stratify? I think there's one important thing that we've learned coming at it from the longevity side, and that is what we've seen is that the price you pay for being on a GLP, it doesn't show up until the end of your life. And then it apparently has a very heavy price at that point. So when you're young, you can lose muscle, and we talk about it at these conferences. Oh, you know, every time you cycle on and off of a GLP, you end up with less muscle than the last cycle. You know, but what is the price you pay for that? I don't think anybody had a very good answer for it. And at least, you know, I have data now that I'll be presenting later that there's at least one price that's obvious, but it only shows up at the end of your life. So
John, you're in a similar area of biology as Kevin. So do you want to react to any of that, or?
Actually, I think on the face of it, there may be similarities. And there are some similarities in outcomes, according to what Kevin's just said. But yeah, the target-based approaches, as I understand it, are completely different. So we're drugging a protein target in the mitochondria.
Is it a novel target?
Yeah, we're targeting a novel target in the mitochondria, and really the MOA is, I think, as we all know, the aim of the game is to reverse the loss of mitochondrial adaptation, which is called to insulin resistance, which is what we do. So, for example, we'll know that there's a blunted response in respiratory quotient after insulin in patients with obesity T2D. So that's key to what I'm doing, and I'll present more data, including metabolic age data at 220 today here and again at ADA.
Great.
Very interesting.
Yeah, with respect
approaches.
to targets, there was a drug approved this year called elamiprotide. It was approved for Zenity. It was approved by Stealth Bio. It targets the intermitochondrial membrane. It binds cardiolipin, and it has some, kind of effects on muscle. And so there is an FDA regulatory pathway now for a drug that does it. Ours, I would say ours is in the same class, but much more profound. It adds a second mechanism. So I don't know, for the targets.
Yeah.
Can I just add a more general comment on targets? I think we see trends in any therapeutic area. So just in the same way that we've seen like PD-1s for oncology or IL-33 for respiratory or GLP-1s for obesity for that matter, that's usually what happens. And it's a double-edged sword. So like for our axis, like inhibin E, ALK7, what we have now seen, we see new patents coming out almost every week from China. We see multiple entrants to clinical right now. It's a double-edged sword because it both it reinforces the mechanism, and you see multiple, companies showing that it works. On the other hand, it becomes more of a race. I think for us, we're pretty good, both first and potential best in terms of pharmacology. But that's always going to happen for any new mechanism.
Yeah. We didn't talk about a lot of the things that have been repurposed or repositioned, like the myostatins, promyostatin, GDF8. Is there a reason that we're not discussing those? What we learned from them or didn't learn from them. And some of the other more novel targets like GPR75 and forget what ALK7, other things that are being targeted. So are just general thoughts? Maybe we can go around on some of these other things. Maybe we start with the myostatins and what are the limitations there, or what are the opportunities? Brady, you can comment on too.
Go ahead.
So I don't think that some of those targets are necessarily out. I think it's just been there's such a big focus on GLP-1s in recent years. It's been overshadowing a lot of the work that's been still being done in some of those other areas. So you mentioned GPR75. So yeah, that's still being worked on. There's still some promise there. But then we see some of the others, muscle-sparing ones. We talked about the magrobab earlier, where maybe some of those adverse events that we didn't initially anticipate were starting to come out in later stage trials. So,
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So I can see a lot of promise in some of those, like the 6 Peaks assets. So potentially in combination with twincretin, etc. In terms of what's in the clinic now, if we look at the scale of weight loss achievable through a combination of MTRX31 and tirzepatide, for example, or actually MTRX31 alone is greater than tirzepatide-mediated fat loss. So I think what I can see coming is a first sort of combination-based phase over the next 5 years, and then gradually some of the next-gen therapies will start to edge out those. But yeah, it's a bright future ahead and lots of choice for physicians and patients.
I think the best way to look at this is with this kind of an analogy. As you age, your body develops more and more inflammation, mostly from the buildup of senescent cells in your body that secrete the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. It's a highly inflammatory phenotype that goes all over the body, and it creates this environment of which everything I'm hearing about has to operate in that environment. So the way I look at it, if you're using a myostatin drug or an active and targeted drug or follistatin, you're trying to force the muscle to grow or to increase in volume in an environment where it doesn't want to do it. It's like rowing a boat upstream. And if you could just turn the boat around and row downstream, I think you see, a better outcome. So if you can just reduce the inflammation that's caused by widespread senescent cell in the body, then you don't have to do that much. At that point, the body starts fixing itself. It's almost like immunotherapy. I had the first CAR T-cell company, Bellicum Pharmaceuticals. I took it public in 2014 in a $500 million market cap. And I love the story. It was like using the body to heal itself, using the immune system to heal itself. Immunotherapy is that story. This is kind of the same idea now in sort of obesity medicine and longevity medicine. Instead of targeting things to try and make them do things they don't want to do, let's figure out how to target the underlying problems and resolve those, and then all the other things will resolve themselves. That's how I look at it.
Erik, what about you? I've been a long time gene editor, nucleic acid guy. What do you think about some of these other targets that we mentioned?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what have been said already. There are a lot of new mechanisms out there. I think I'm coming back to, again, just like we need to get into clinic and show that they work. And as soon as they start working, then there will be a lot of momentum around it. And I also want to circle back a little bit to what Brady said. I actually do agree with him that there is still a strong focus on the scale weight, but I do see that things are starting to move quite much. Like we're working with a KOL who's running a huge obesity clinic, and when she has a new patient, she always asks like, so what's your goal? And they say, oh, I want to lose 40 pounds or 30 pounds or something like that. So I want to be 170 pounds. And then she shows a picture of Michael Phelps, and she's like, he's 200. Like, do you want to do this or do you be 107? Oh, I want to be like Michael Phelps. So I think there's a lot of education, both for patients, KOLs, strategics, and investors, and that's ongoing. And again, as I said before, I see a big change already over the last year in terms of this focus on body compositions. I think like we're moving towards a light future where it matters, where the outcome is really what matters in terms of decreasing downstream diseases.
Any questions in the audience before we wrap up? We're starting to run out of time here, but any questions out here?
Any last minute comments from our panelists? All right, John, go ahead.
So I think the education piece really, it would be useful if patients were better able to identify themselves and the risks associated with whatever condition they might have. So again, going back to that group of, there are seniors with a BMI less than 30 and high triglycerides, expanded waist. And yeah, I'm in the UK healthcare system. If you go in with a BMI below a certain number, there probably won't be a comment. Yeah, to my chagrin, as I build muscle mass in the gym, I'm now being told off for increasing my BMI through muscle mass expansion. So I think patients being able to identify that having an enlarged waist size, having in combination with this gluteofemoral fat, and that being an issue, something that they need to address. I think that's really important.
There is another education issue that I've noticed. When you hear this idea that muscle loss with GLPs is sort of out in the public, I hear a lot of people say, I just go to the gym and work out a lot, and so it doesn't affect me. In my opinion, working out all day can maybe have a 10% effect on the muscle loss that you otherwise experience from the metabolic issue. First of all, your body, over the age of 50, you're losing 1 to 2% of muscle every year, even without the GLPs. So, this idea that you can go to the gym and fix the whole problem is wrong, and I'm not sure how it got out there, but that's an issue.
And to add to that, there needs to be more education on the risks of a sedentary lifestyle, and more to be done on quality of food. But being in drug discovery, I probably can't school retailers or government and how we achieve that. But just in my experience, I expect we've all had the same experience since I've been aware. The availability of very high calorie, high sugar, almost nutritionless food at the point of sale. I think it's a huge problem, and I think it's probably government's responsibility to address this in what will be tremendously unpopular measures. But I think it has to be done, especially where there are public payers involved, because we're simply adding massive costs to healthcare, which is completely unnecessary, and we're addicting kids to high sugar foods, which is quite reckless as a society. I think we all know that in terms of outcomes, 5% body weight loss isn't going to be enough. And for patients who can't moderate their own behaviors around food, I think molecules like MitoRx 31 and others in development could really help, because we very significantly improve cardiometabolic markers across the piece, free fatty acids, cholesterol, reversing the liver enzyme profile and reverse insulin resistance. Maybe that should be the focus.